I'm Michele Levani. Take me just a second. I'm going to share my screen so you guys will be able to see the work as I'm doing it as well. So if you'll give me just a second, and then I'll describe to you what I'm going to be doing. Right? Can everyone see that? See my workspace? Is it clear?
Yeah, I think everybody's muted, but we'll take it for granted.
Okay.
And if they want to ask questions, they can through the chat. And
Okay.
as you're going along, and I'll kind of intercede and ask the question for them.
Okay. All right. Well, tonight I'm going to be working with a couple mediums that I've been working with for a few years now. I like mixed media. I like water-based mediums, easy cleanup, less fumes. And so I had discovered Derwent Inktense. These are the pencils. They come in both pencils and in blocks. And this was actually my first starter set. And if you want to try them out, I suggest just getting the starter set first. After I got these, I found out which ones I use the most of, and I just ordered them individually after this. The blocks come in a set of 72. That's the biggest size that you can get. The blocks I used a lot. I will be combining them along with golden open acrylics, which are my favorite acrylic paints. The open allows you to paint longer. They were actually designed for plein air painting, which is how I found out about them. I was doing research to find out which ones had the longest drying time and working time. And now I use them all the time. They're wonderful acrylics. But I found that the combination of the two really give me a unique effect. The Derwent Inktense pencils and blocks are highly versatile. They're water soluble. They come in both pencils and blocks, and they create an ink-like color when combined with water. Due to its permanence, once it's dried, Inktense can be worked over without affecting the previous layer. Unlike watercolor, which tends to lift, the Inktense do not. On their website, they advertised it as being suitable for use on fabric and other surfaces. That really caught my attention. If it's used on fabric and it's permanent, then what other surfaces can I try this on? So I began experimenting, and I discovered that they're wonderful even on a gessoed canvas, on wood, and even in my wall murals, because I've been doing wall murals, residential and commercial, for many, many years, and they work on a wall. They are permanent. On traditional watercolor paper, they can have that look of watercolor without that lift that I mentioned, because they're permanent when they dry. They're ideal for underpainting, to apply your values, and then layering it with acrylics. And though I've not experimented this way, you should be able to use them even under pastels. Because they are also an ink, they can be used just as an ink would. Some people who are not artists will buy them to do coloring book pages or their scrapbooks. The colors are buildable, and they become more intense as you let each layer dry. Now, I like to use a heat gun between my layers to speed up the process, but it's not necessary. The other unique feature that I discovered with Inktense was the ability to use them as a glaze over the acrylics. This gives my paintings real depth and allows me to add subtle hints of color and shading where needed. It's particularly helpful when I'm painting things like white fur or hair, because we all know that white isn't really white. But in my paintings, after laying down the values with Inktense in my underpainting, I'll paint the next layer, traditionally using like an opaque titanium white. And then after that's dry, I'll use the Inktense and glaze over the white in the various colors that I see in the fur. And when I'm satisfied with the colors and shadows, I'll go back with the titanium white to add a few highlights. And then to finish my paintings, when it's on watercolor paper, it's not necessary to apply a protectant because that's traditionally under glass. However, on canvas, I do usually apply a water-based polyacrylic and a satin finish. It's not required, but I like that it gives it a nice evenness to the surface, since Inktense tend to dry flat and acrylics dry with a glossier sheen. So this way it's nice and all the same sheen. So with that being said, since you can see my screen right here, I'm going to first start with showing you two different substrates. So I like to use Fabriano hot pressed paper, hot pressed watercolor paper, because I do like the smoother texture when I'm doing details and such. Let me move these out of the way. So this is the hot pressed paper. And I just drew a standard circle just so you guys can kind of get an idea. These are the blocks, so you can see what they look like. Mine are quite used. And of course, the pencils. So you have two different processes that you can actually do. You can go in, get my paintbrush. Go directly into your, let's say I want to do a green. Well, you can go directly in and wet the blocks like so. And this would be painting very similar to what watercolor would be. Now I'm going to pick up a shadow. Now what's really cool is over here is my open acrylic. And this is called Titan Apple Green, one of my favorite shades. And it's an opaque paint, so now it's blending and making it smoother. And my trusty heat gun, it'll make a little noise, I apologize. dries pretty quickly. Now I'm going to go back and shadow on top. And if I want to bring that more intense green back, I can.
And somebody asked, Catherine Parker asked, shadowing with ink blocks or acrylic?
I did it with the ink blocks. And I just put the highlight in. So that was just straight up with the Inktense as the first layer, then a layer with the acrylic, and then I go back in with the Inktense to glaze over top of it. Then I go back in with a highlight. That's with directly wetting the sticks. I'm sorry, the blocks. But you can also use the pencils the same way. And then wet it. So you have the choice to be able to apply it directly with the pencil and then wet, or you can wet the blocks. Now, I told you I like this Titan apple green. I blend it with a lot of the colors and it just kind of mutes and softens it. It's a really good neutral, even though it's green. It's a really good neutral. I don't typically dip in my paint barrel like this, the tub, but I'm almost out of the white, so. Okay. So just a basic circle on hot pressed paper. You can see how that looks. Now I just grabbed the canvas board so you can see the difference. You can do the exact same thing on a canvas. This is just the gessoed canvas. Actually, I'm going to start with the shadow first. The color that I'm using on shadowing this right now is called Bark. It's got a plummy shade to it. It's not really brown. It's kind of almost a fawn shade. And you can actually use the pencils on the canvas as well. I find with the pencils, the color is much more intense than when you're just using the blocks.
So there's not a lot of difference other than the fact that this is the paper and this is the canvas. So you can have the ability to paint on just about anything with this. And like I said, you can paint on fabric as well. It's permanent. So the next thing I'm going to show you is if you shop at the Artists Craftsman Supply, you know that they have a cat, or if you follow them on social media, the one on King Street has a cat named Gamblin. And a little over a year ago, they kept posting photos. Well, they still post photos of Gamblin, but there was this one shot, and I sent them a message and I said, oh, I'd love to paint that. Can you give me the freedom to do that? And they're like, yes, we'd love it if you do. Well, I hadn't done it yet, so tonight was the night. Anyway, I prepared 2 different surfaces. So this is on the hot press paper. I actually drew it out and then I just painted the background black because it was the easiest thing to do and quickest. Of course, I use wax paper so I can kind of protect the surface, but I'm going to give you just a little bit of an idea on how to do, how I lay out for my pet portraits when I'm doing with this method with the Inktense and the acrylics. So I'm going to take you kind of step by step, but I'm not going to complete this, but I do have a completed one for you to see. So first of all, I like to look for the values and do an underpainting. So make sure I got the clean water, and I'm going to be using the Inktense to do that. Let me scoot this over just a little bit. So I'm looking for my values. Now, you know, most of us can see we've trained our eyes as artists to be able to see the values. I have a hard time just looking at my daughter's dog without looking at him just and trying to figure out the values in his face just while I'm talking to him. You know, it's like I start picking things out, or just walking around in nature and you just start to see the values in things. But if you struggle with that,
I'll tell you, it's a real benefit to take a photo and take one of your photo apps and turn it to black and white. And that'll help you see your values. At times, I will be given a photo that is really hard when I'm doing a commissioned portrait, particularly for the company that I am contracted with. They send me the worst photos sometimes to be able to do a portrait. And I have to use photo apps to like lighten the photo, blow it up so I can see the details, and clear up the picture. And that helps me define the values as well. So if you struggle with finding your values, use a photo app, turn it black and white. You'll be able to see things a lot clearer. Another important thing is recognizing that it really takes layers. Don't be satisfied with just that first layer. A lot of times we might quit thinking, oh, this looks horrible. But the more layers that you put on, it's like the painting comes to life. The depth that you can get with the layers. And for me, bouncing back and forth between doing the Inktense and doing the acrylic really gives it that depth that I'm looking for. A lot of times I will have probably 8 layers in one of my paintings because I've worked and worked until I get the effect that I want. I don't give up. I don't think it's a bad painting, you know, until you've really exhausted all the layers. You have to go through that ugly stage most of the time in painting. Inktense are so pretty that even if you decided that you didn't want to use acrylics with them, just the underpainting alone, a lot of people are satisfied with that, you know, because it's a unique look. But you can just use straight up Inktense. You don't have to mix them with anything else. I just like the effect of being able to mix the different mediums. I'm of the mindset of use what you want to get the effect that you want. As long as it's archival, color fast. All right. So I'm going to stop at this point. You can see this is the process of underpainting when it comes to the hot press. Now, I've got it prepped on a canvas. I'm not going to do the underpainting. I'm going to show you a nose and an eye. And in this situation, I actually am going to use the pencils. So I'm going to use the fuchsia in the nose first. I'm going to lay that down because if you look in the photograph of the actual cat, you can see the layers of shades, like it's a fuchsia to a tan to a peachy color in the nose. So I layer my Inktense in those shades. So here's the fuchsia first. And then I'm going to go over it with baked earth, which is an orangey clay color. First. Now I'm going to go over this with acrylic. And I'm going to actually use that Titan apple green. Because when you mix green with red as a complementary color, we know what happens. But when you mix this kind of peachy pinky orange with that light green, it's really pretty. I use this combination quite a bit with tongues and noses of animals. Now I'm going to go back with a little underpainting around that nose. Since I didn't. Normally I would have done this prior to, but like I did on the hot press paper, but use my pen for a second. I just went over this with acrylic. I believe this was, let me see, I can't remember what. Raw umber. Another nice thing about the Inktense is that if you are painting on canvas and you see holes, you know, some of the white canvas might pop through. Now, some people pre-paint their canvases so they don't have that issue, but you can go over with the Inktense and it'll fill in any of those little holes that you might have. So like there's a space between the pink and the raw umber. Will be gone in just a minute. Okay. And put a little bit of a peach on the Inktense. Brush it over, filling in that hole. Okay. Now I'm going to do an eye. Now the eyes are green. Yeah. I'm going to start with, can't even read what it's called, leaf green as a shadow. I also noticed that there's a touch of blue. So I'm going to add just a touch of blue into that eye. And just a touch of apple green. Smaller brush.
Go in with a little bit of the acrylic. Blend. So that make it more opaque.
Hmm.
So heat gun. All right, now I'm going to glaze over top. Pull in some more shadows with the Inktense. Now I lost some of that blue. I'm going to pull some blue back into it. Even a touch of yellow.
Now, I could stop at this layer if I wanted to. Of course, once the whole painting is complete. But what I do next really gives it depth. So let me move this aside. Everyone see that? So this is what I did earlier today. And the completed eye, you can see, is this one right here. This one is not complete because it doesn't look like it has depth to it. So I want to add some depth to that eye. So what I would do, clean glass of water. And go through a ton of water. Because if your water gets dirty, then everything gets muddy. So, all right. So now I'm going to pick up that shade that I used initially that I called bark. It's a plummy color. And make it real thin. Too thin. Glaze over top. I also want to pick up a little bit more of this peachy color. So right over top of what I have already completely painted. This is several layers. You can see how bright the Inktense is right over top of the paint. So this is layers of Inktense along with the acrylics. I can come back with my shadow around the nose area, make it deeper, glazing it using the Inktense. A little indentation right there, so I'm going to add just a little bit darker glaze. I want this to be a little bit pinker, the tongue. So pull up a more rosier color. If I go over the highlight that I already have there, that's okay. Actually, right now, once that's dry up here, I'm going to just go over a couple little areas. A little too much. With the acrylic again, and kind of bring out the highlights.
details. Oh. Now the other thing, I'd like to see this be a little bit more of a warm peachy tan shade. So I'm going to pick up from the Inktense blocks. I'm gonna come over here and I'm going to glaze on top.
And Michelle, somebody wanted to know before you end the painting demo, what you are actually using again. And also, somebody wanted to know if you are, what you use to varnish your painting.
Oh, I use polyacrylic. It's water based clear acrylic, and I just use a satin finish.
Another kind of cool thing that it's a feel that I have for it. So it's kind of hard to describe how I get this effect, but it's, I use the Inktense blocks to get the feeling of the fur. I can give you an example of it if you can see this really good. Let's see. Let's go right here. I don't know if you can see that. Get a little bit more. So the details with the Inktense on top of the acrylic, you can actually create hair with this ink. Make sure you guys can see that.
And Michelle, Susan Verville says, thank you for sharing your process. The layers really do create an interesting level of depth.
Thank you.
And Esther wanted to know which golden acrylic is preferred.
Open. The open golden acrylic. I can tell you that the drying time on the open acrylics is incredible. Like, I just laid these paints down here on a paper palette, and I can have wet paint here for over 24 hours. It stays wet. It's awesome. And that's without adding any other extender. That's just the paint itself.
And Jan Kelly thanks you. She says your painting is really coming to life.
Thank you.
Sally would like to know what kind of brushes you use.
Cheap. I go through so many brushes that I started ordering from Jerry's Artorama, just their brushes that they have by Creative Mark. That's their brand. And I'm real satisfied with them. And because I'm very hard on my brushes, you know, I think when you're using water-based medium, and they get washed so much and they're in water so much that it's harder on them than possibly with oils, because at least you're treating it with oil, but water can be very hard on your brushes. And because I average about 30 pet portraits each week, I have to buy something that's more disposable. As long as the brushes, when I receive them, are nice and taut and that the bristles stay intact, I'm happy with them. And even when they get a little bit frayed for doing pet portraits and you've got hair and stuff like that, a little fray isn't that bad unless you're doing the detail stuff. But I buy brushes on a regular basis, like they're, you know, disposable for me. So.
Now that brush you're using right now, can you hold that up to the camera?
Right, this way, is that best? Yeah.
The end, yeah, the end of your brush. It's separated.
Yeah, but this is a new one, believe it or not.
No, but don't they make them for painting whiskers and also painting, like if you're doing a landscape with seagrass or whatever, it's cut or separated so that it has different
Exactly.
strands or whatever.
And that's what I use this one for. You know, and then I'll use something finer like this for the whiskers, or if I need to, you know, this size. The only thing about the shorter bristles, most of you guys will probably find this is true, is that they get damaged even quicker. The shorter the bristles, the more likely that they just don't hold their shape as well. I'm a real fan of filbert. I love that shape. To me, you can do just about anything when you're painting with a filbert brush. So.
Sally wants to know where the Titian Green Apple paint is found.
You can get it on, you can actually get this paint at the Artists Craftsman. They finally started carrying a full array of it. Used to be all you could find was just like the landscape set. But then they started carrying the full range of it. But I order a lot from Jerry's Artorama too. So I bounce back and forth between those two places for getting my products. I like having the tubs of the golden opens, and the Artist Craftsman Supply only sells the tubes. So this is the green, the Titan Green Pale. That's what it's called, Titan Green Pale. And this is what they have it, you know, size-wise at the Artist Craftsman. They have this size and smaller, I believe. But for the others, like this size, and then of course it comes in a bigger tub than this, but the colors that I use the most often, I'll get in these big tubs, or in a pinch, run down to Artist Craftsman and grab what I need. Too much water.
Could you back the painting up and show us what you've done?
Let's see, maybe it might be best if I do it this direction. Can you see it clearly enough? I don't know if the colors show true on camera.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It is beautiful.
Thank you. When I paint for Chewy, I usually only do maybe 2 layers because these are more about production than they are about the detail. But when I'm painting a commission for my own personal client, then I put all the details into it and I put several layers and take more time with those.
Before we close the meeting, is there any other questions that people would like to ask? If you want to go ahead and chat, then I can refer them to Michele. We just wanted to know of any last minute questions. I think somebody had asked, do you prefer acrylics over oils?
I love oils. I
From
do
Esther?
love oils. I just have not been in a good ventilated area to be able to work in oils. And I have not tried the water-based oils yet, but that's been my only thing. We're redoing this space now, and my husband's going to be putting a fan, not a ceiling fan, but a ventilating fan in here so that I'll be able to work in oils more freely because it's in my house. He's sensitive to smells, and I don't want to be like, you know, working around them without proper ventilation. But I do love oils. Acrylics have been great though because they're quick drying. And of course, when I'm doing the pet portraits for that company, I have to do things very, very fast. So oils would not be practical for that means. And when I've painted murals, like I've done commercial and residential murals for over 25 years. And of course, that's not practical either. In the old days, that was, but being in an, you know, in an environment where you want things to be more non-toxic for the client, as well as the drying time and getting things done quickly. So oils, yes, I love them. I just have not been using them as of recent. I used them years ago, but not recently. So I'm looking forward to getting back into doing some oils. So once my ventilation is better in the studio, then I definitely want to pick up some oils, or I do have oils, but to start using them again. So.